Right, this is going to be a cubing ramble. I've done one of these before and people wanted more. I'm going to have a proper blind video come out at some point, but this is a video I'm going to cover some great concepts. I have pretty high success rate in blind, I'd say. I can sometimes go pretty long streaks of, successes. I got a lot of official means. I've had, yeah. I know myself when it comes to accuracy. I'm not 100% accurate, but I know how to avoid a lot of them. So what I've done is I've just written out on my screen all of what I think are the common reasons for people getting DNFs, and I'm just going to list off the top of my head ways to avoid them. And yeah, I'm just going to start. I just need to get a scramble up. But the ones I've got are mistracing, missed flips and twists, forgetting, some simple exec errors, so like inverse comms or recall errors where you do a wrong com or do the wrong targets in M2 or something, or exec errors by just a few moves. So let's start with mistracing because yeah, we'll just get a scramble. Now, what causes mistracing? It's hard to say really. Maybe sometimes you, especially as a beginner, you'll catch a glimpse of two pieces, and because you're not as used to it yet, you might see this. You might think this is green instead of blue. Now, deduction from, or you might think this is like, white instead of yellow. It's probably a more likely scenario. You might think this is this piece, whereas it's this piece, and that is probably the reason you would trace the wrong comms. And sometimes your memo works out like that. Or it could be to do with the letters. You might memorize the wrong letter on a whim. Everyone can get things like that occasionally. So things like that lead to it. How is the best way to fix your tracing? Just write down memo, I'd say, is a good way. If the common issue is you are tracing wrong, do some solves where you write your memo down. You don't look at it, you just read off the memo and just really get used to memorizing correctly. Or if you can't be bothered to do that, it is probably just as valid to go and just do solves slower. If you're mistracing constantly in memorization, that just means you're memorizing a bit too fast. It's good to push your memory occasionally, but you don't want to do it for every solve, and this is probably a case where you're going to want to bring it back a little bit. So, yeah. So I don't know why I got to scramble up for this, but yeah. I guess the other thing is, which I've got coming up next, is missed flips and twists. Now, when I scramble like this, you've got the twist right in front of you. So it's pretty easy to tell you're going to get a flip or twist, but sometimes they don't stick out, and you need to know when to look for them. So, firstly, just remind yourself, especially before official solves, remind yourself to look for them, but you can actually trace it. I've got a pretty simple scramble. I've just done moves. It's quite obviously got twists on it, but let's say you trace from UFR, and UFR goes to here, and this is the UFR piece, so you'd think the cycle would be done. Now, if you're not actively looking for the flips and twists, you might think that the buffer's solved. But what happens if we do swap these two? It's twisted. And how can you tell that? Because you're not actually at the UFR sticker, you're at this sticker. So, you know you've got twists somewhere. We've actually got two here, but that will at least alert your brain to the fact that there is a twist. We can do the same for the edge buffer, so we'll go, and this is going to be more complicated. So, let's trace from from UF, we'll go here to here, and this is the solved buffer. So we cycle break, we'll go here to here, to here to here, to here. Wait, hold on, no, I'm doing this wrong. Sorry, I forgot to pseudo swap. Here to here, here to here, here to here. The buffer's solved. Now we want to cycle back. What am I doing? Yeah, here to here, here to here, here to here. Buffer's solved. Why is this? This scramble doesn't work. Yeah, it's because we need to cycle back here. Let me just. I've got this scramble wrong. So let's say this is the scramble instead, because we've only got one flip here. If you want to know how to know when there's probably two flips, your memo will just seem short. Yeah, that's all I can say. Double flips is best, like say I got the cube in this orientation and these two are flipped, I would notice that as I was rotating, but there's no other way other than the memo seems too short, but the pieces, but you haven't seen lots of solved edges. So anyway, let's trace this again. Here to here, here to here, here to here, here, and this is the flipped buffer. Now we've got a cycle break here, so we're going to go here, and then here, and then back to here. So when we cycle broke with the buffer flipped, we're at the end of the cycle, we came back to the exact sticker we broke to. So say it was more like this. So we went here to here, here to here, here to here, here. We were here. We broke to here because this is the solved buffer. We cycle broke to here, and then when we got back to it, it actually the cycle ended on the other sticker. That means that buffer piece will then be flipped, and I can show you that now. And then that's flipped. You're gonna have to do a flip out. So, that's a lot to take in, and it's hard to get used to looking for that, but eventually it becomes second nature to just know when there is going to be a flip or not. And usually, once you're good at tracing, you'll be able to detect which edge it is pretty quickly as well. You got to remember the 3x3 isn't very big. There's very few places the edge could be, and if you've got a good grip of your memo, you will notice it. So that's missed, flips, and twists. Forgetting is my next one. Forgetting your memo can happen for a few reasons. Probably you're taking it too fast, but also how much sense does your memo make? Now, I don't think at a high level that you want your memo to make a lot of sense, but most of the time to have it be completely incoherent is not great. Maybe add a couple of joining words in corners would help if you're having a big problem with forgetting. A main one would be the transition between corners and edges. So a great tip I got from Will Cern ages ago now was that he called it shouting your first letter pair. I wouldn't shout, but like, I think the example he gave was like, if his scramble shot starts with OH, he'd be like, oh, at the start of memo, and like it would be an exclamation. The reason, and because it's like sort of exclaimed like that, you remember it a lot more, and you'll usually find that remembering your first letter pair will bring back the next ones as long as they're slightly related. It can be nonsense, but if you've added the words to relate them anyway, then it will come back to you and it will flow. And removing that pause is a big thing for exec anyway. You can have too many letter pairs that are similar. But I'll go into that in a bit. But also just not having very vivid letter pairs. A big one for forgetting in edges is like audio. So when I started using audio for edges, if I got two consonants like C, D or something, or I would just be like, okay, this doesn't have a vowel in it, let's just stick an A in there. And the reason that was bad was because, well, all of it was just sounds like constantly throughout my memo. There are very few pairs that weren't that sound in the middle of it, and that was the main thing you're going to remember. So I actually went through my audio and I made sure there was a diversity of sounds in it. If that sounds difficult, but you can sort of relate them to your corner images. So like, I'm trying to think of a good one. Yeah, like, so we've got DV, and my image is a diver, so since I want to keep it one syllable, if I get DV, I don't say dav anymore, I say dive. And because it's like that, they're more unique to themselves and they're easier to remember. And the same does go for, corner letter pairs, just make them quite unique to each other. But you might also just be taking your memo too fast, and though it's good to push yourself and keep trying and trust your memory, you want to have a balance of both. You want to have the speed where you're at your max speed and forgetting a lot, and then you want to have a medium speed and you want to have a slow speed where you can always get successes. And striving to have a state where you can always get successes will mean that it's very easy for you to go into competitions, get a success on the first solve, and just secure yourself at least a result, which is my competition strategy most of the time. Right, let's go on to some more like exec stuff. So the simple exec errors, doing inverse comms. So let's say you get this comm, here to here to here, and you're so used to it, you do it that way. Oops. Okay, see, even I make mistakes. Wow. Anyway, or you get like something like this case, and you're like, and you remember this one is just a ZBLL, and you're just doing that. So you're doing a lot of inverse comms, which is only a 3-star thing, but I have stuff that relates to M2 as well. So keep listening. The main thing is that you're learning your comms as algs instead of comms. You want to get to the state with 3-star that you actually feel like you're solving the pieces every time. And I say that to everyone, and I've never had a single person understand me there, but trust me, it makes sense. So you want to... 3-star should feel intuitive. And you should be able to relate your comms to what it looks like on a cube to be solving that case. Please, somebody, if you get that, tell me that you could understand what I mean. It's very hard, but the gist of it is they should not feel like algorithms. They should feel like, effectively, just like instead of 800 algorithms, they should feel like 800 F2L cases, and you know the exact solution for all of them. And yeah. So if you've got two cases that are pretty long and you're struggling to tell apart which is which, the way I've always gone about it is I decide which one of the cases I like more. Do I like this case more, or do I like this case more? Now, I actually prefer this one. So I call this the good case and this the bad case. So for me, because I trace from RUF, the letter pair for this one is MF, and the letter for this is FM. So I'm relating FM, which is like the word family, and I would imagine that as a good thing. And you can think of a way to remember that for yourself. But as long as you can remember one of them is the bad case and one of them is the good case, or at least one of them is one of the cases, you will probably be able to remember that a bit more. Eventually, you'll stop having to need that, and it will be completely mindless, but that definitely helps at first. But definitely understand your comms on an intuitive level as well, and don't have them be too algorithmic, because otherwise you are going to make those errors, and you're also going to make little single move errors quite often by executing them wrong. Recall, which leads to like doing a wrong comm or doing a wrong target. Now that probably means your letter pairs are... I would blame that on memo. So in edges, it's having too many similar audio sounds, and corners, it's having too many similar images. Now, I have used this example a million times, but let's say you had the letter pairs PN and you had the letter pair DK, and you use something really similar for both of those letter pairs. Now, you are probably going to mix them up at least once, and that's just because you need to, get rid of all the penises in your memo and try and put something sensible in there. So PN could become pen, DK could become Donkey Kong, and you use that, and CK could be cake. I could go on for a long time. I had a big issue with this. You'd be surprised how many people have that precise issue. But yeah, sorting those letter pairs out is going to lead to a lot fewer corner-based DNFs based on recall errors. You might also forget that there's an edge or corner twist. You could start out by memorizing them in a certain way. You could try... I don't know, I've never really had an issue, but you could try. I wouldn't really recommend using a letter pair for them because that adds a whole extra letter pair to your memo. But you just need to find something, really visualise it, make sure to look straight at it at the end of your memo, and ideally you'd remember it. you know, you just got to find what works for you with that, but find some way of remembering it so you don't miss it. A lot of remembering certain cases in blind doesn't come from just the memo itself, but it's the feeling you get on seeing it. So you get a really bad, really annoying corner twist case, like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this case, and because I mess it up a lot, and so when I get it, I'm just sort of like, Christ, is this case again? And, well, I don't think those exact words, but then when I get to it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's the rubbish case that annoys me when I get it. That's what your brain does, and you recall stuff like that. So sometimes you'll see a flip, and you'll be like, Christ, there's a flip all the way down there. Brilliant. And yeah, things like I guess this is probably the worst one, and for like UF and yeah, so. Things like that will definitely help to recall it. But like edges, again, just things being too similar. Think of your what letters you use. Think about if you've actually got any identical sounds. Like, I don't have C and K both in my memo, but there could be stuff like that, or like yeah, but it's probably more like if you had like FB would be fab and FD would be fad, then like that would, so you want to change things so they don't sound too similar. That is mostly where doing wrong comms is. In fact, I think that is probably the only cause, other than just having a bit of a brain fart, but that shouldn't happen too often, especially as you get more confident. And the last thing is just like exec errors by like single or two moves. You'll be able to tell that this is off by a single move, because the amount of pieces out of place will be 4 corners and 4 edges, because that's what a single move does. They might be like 2E, 2E, 2C, 2C or something, or it will just look completely scrambled. That's how you know you've done like bad exec errors. But yeah, so know your cases properly on an intuitive level, so you're not going to miss moves. Don't try and force your turning too much. Don't like you want to try and turn accurately. Blindfolded isn't about TPS anyway, until you get to the top level. Most blind solvers actually turn quite a bit slower than their actual max TPS until they're like probably sub 18, sub 17. It's not the big thing, so you don't want to spam too much TPS, and you just want to make sure you get the moves right more than anything. I would slow down your exec, because not only will it stop you from making so many exec errors, but you'll work on your think ahead at the same time, so you'll actually benefit from it quite a bit in comparison to just turning as fast as you can. I could probably get quite easily sub 30 just turning like this, because as long as look at Graham Siggin's exec videos on his channel, you can get like sub 15 exec just turning like this. Like not really max speed, but you'll get some good exec. So it's a good idea to slow down your exec in the first place, but it could also be like if you're using M2, you might be undoing setup moves wrong. So like you might do that M2 and then undo like that, and then when you do your next target, suddenly you're off by all of this, which is coincidentally is 4 edges, 4 corners. But so if you're getting stuff like that, I suppose, I mean, that is probably just you rushing. You really want to get to the point with M2 especially where things are completely mindless. But a good thing is like once you've done this, it should be intuitive to undo from here, because your hand comes back into home grip, so you'd have to re-grip to do it wrong. So I'm not sure if that's actually a common thing, but I've definitely seen stuff like that would probably be an issue. Corner exec errors as well, like especially if you're doing like wiper method for corners, that's very likely. Using comms makes it a lot less likely for you to do exec errors by a few moves, but I could see stuff like a comm like this, you could probably end up doing stuff like that and like missing the last move. So for that, it's just a case, again, of just visualizing the COM in your head and just really thinking about what the cube looks like and really feel like you're solving the pieces and getting everything back into the right spot as you do it. Another thing is just do sighted solves. Just solve the cube with freestyle or your blind method, like just normally. Just sit around and do it, because you'll get a much better feel for what it does to the cube, and that will help quite a lot. I think that basically covers all of the main reasons for DNFs. If you've got any other reason for DNF, just comment it and I will, other than like mechanical corn twists and pops, like just set your cube up well. That's basically everything. So yeah, if you've got any other reasons, then please do comment and I will try and give you any solutions I can to that. But overall, I think this is a pretty comprehensive way to try and reduce the amount of DNFs you get by as much as possible. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful.